In a legal briefing filed in the Supreme Court, the group of AGs argue there needs to be an immediate intervention, and Colorado's decision, quote, has vast consequences beyond the Rocky Mountain state.
It does indeed. The state's signing on to the filing saying the Colorado Supreme Court's decision, that state, on what constitutes an insurrection is standardless and vague. The nation's highest court will hear arguments on February 8th and then set a January 18th deadline for any similar briefs to be filed. Patrick Morrisey joining us, the West Virginia Attorney General. Todd, the Indiana Attorney General. Both are among the AGs who filed within this briefing. Thank you both, gentlemen, for coming on. I'll start with AG from West Virginia, Patrick Morrisey, if I can, with you. Mr. Morrisey, can you talk to me about this? This is really, you've seen bipartisan support among pushing back on Colorado's decision here. What do you expect from the Supreme Court? Do you believe this needs to be a 9-0 decision on this?
Well, it's hard to forecast exactly what the final result will be because ultimately that's the decision of the Supreme Court. But we're very hopeful in the arguments that we're laying out. And I'm glad to be joined by my good friend, Todd Rokita in Indiana. They've done a great job on this. We've been partnering together on a number of these cases. But I think that it's important that the Supreme Court look and understand a couple facts. Number one, this election, when you're talking about president and vice president, it's a national election. So that's why it's so important that if the Supreme Court were to weigh in, this is their call. This is not a call for state courts or for a state official. And you can't have a standardless term. Right now, part of the problem we see with respect to defining this term insurrection is that it's everyone's word of the week. It could mean anything to a number of people. And especially when you have a situation where you have a candidate for president who's not even been indicted or convicted of that particular crime, they're trying to deprive him of the right to be on the ballot. That deprives him, and it deprives states like West Virginia, Indiana, and across the board. It dilutes our vote if we can't have our choice for president on the ballot. I hope that the court is going to be looking closely at the fact that this is a role for Congress to look at, and that it's a federal decision, and that the states in this instance, and I take this seriously because we're always advocates for state rights, that the states in this instance cannot be provided with the opportunity to weigh in and create chaos across the country.
You know, in Colorado, it was just a handful of judges who made that decision. In Maine, it was one Secretary of State who came to her own conclusion that Trump shouldn't be on the ballot. So in your filing, you really do take this seriously. We've got part of the lawsuit. The brief reading, quote, the Colorado court's decision will create widespread chaos. Most obviously, it casts confusion into an election cycle that is just weeks away. Beyond that, it upsets the respective roles of the Congress, the states, and the courts. And that's what we heard from AG Morrisey there. But AG Rokita, let me go to you. Again, talk to me about the significance of this filing, considering there's a current ballot challenge in your own state. What would this mean?
Well, I'll tell you, when you see over 26 states, over half the country getting behind not President Trump politically, but President Trump as a candidate. And the idea that, like you said, one Secretary of State or one state Supreme Court can try to disenfranchise other voters in other states like this. And you see, again, half the states come forward and say this is wrong, no matter who the candidate is, I think is very impressive. And so I thank our colleagues in those other states who also joined in here. And if you go to page 14 of the brief, you'll see a very good historical perspective where we cite various cases from the 1700s onwards where it talks about the courts admitting that in what is and what is not an insurrection is really a political decision best left to Congress, as Patrick Morrisey was saying, and that's where it should be, if anywhere. And it's certainly we go through the history of the term and how it's certainly more like a rebellion and taking arms up against your nation in an inappropriate way, and a revolution and that kind of thing. It's certainly not akin to a protest. And so it's all this is much different than the case going on in Indiana, by the way, in that sense. And really what it does is our brief at the end of the day says, you know what, voters get to pick our leaders, not judges.